Hey, this is Lonnie again, here to do a quick screencast on the Forge, code generators in SprintPHP. Now, Sprint comes with a number of generators that you can use from the command line to rapidly create boilerplate code for you, just to save you some time. Here's a list of all of the generators it comes with, including some nice ones for API, which we're not going to go over today. We'll do that in a different one. You can create controllers, migrations, models. You can scaffold all of this together to create basically an entire module for you if you want, or get you up and running. You can create new seed files and new view files. Both of these are fairly generic at the moment, but they do give you a quick start. In addition, and we'll go over this in another video also, you can also make another collection of generators that it can scan to find, so you can take these, copy them, customize them to your company's or your specific needs for maybe just a specific project, just to save you even more time that way. So the first one we're going to go over here today, just because the first one on the docs, is the model file, or the model generator. And this will help you create a model based on Sprint's CIDB model, base model for you, which that model has a ton of stuff built in. There's lots of options to get set up, and from there it's really easy to use, really powerful. To do that though, it takes a little bit of time to set up. So let's save ourselves some time here, shall we? So as you can see, the only model we currently have is the user model, which is what comes stock with Sprint. So let's go over here to our command line and call the Sprint tool. Let's make a new model. It's springtime, so maybe we'll do Forge to tell Sprint that we want to use the Forge generators. And then we tell it the generator we want to use, which in this case is model, and then we tell it the name of the model. If you forget the name of the model, that's okay. It's going to ask you right here. So the model, let's call it the rabbit model, just because it's spring. Easter just happened. Let's do model. Now it's going to ask you the name of the table. In this case, I do not have a table set up in the database for this. If I do, it'll do some stuff extra for you, and I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. But in this case, yeah, we'll accept the default rabbits table. It's going to ask you what you want your primary key to be. In that case, we'll keep it with the default of ID. Yes, we want to set a created date. What this does is automatically, whenever you do an insert in the table, it's set up to use a created on field, and it will automatically set that for you on any insert. So yes, we want it to do that. Sure, we'll go ahead and modify or set the modify date, which happens on updates just like that automatically, so you don't have to set that. Date format, well, I was told by an SQL guru of mine, or a friend of mine, that date time is what you always want to use because it makes debugging easier while you're in the database. So we'll use that. I don't need to log user actions. What this would do is log who created the object, who modified the object, who deleted the object, stuff like that. I'm not going to set that up at the moment. So no. Soft deletes. Soft deletes allow you to set up kind of a trash can scenario or a recycle bin, depending on your operating system, so that whenever you actually call a delete, it'll just toggle a flag in the delete column. And so then it'll know not to pull those up with any finds and find alls, stuff like that. Yes, I want to use that. You can always go through and purge them out later, but we'll go ahead and leave that now. That helps protect you in case something else might rely on that, or you just want to keep a record for what's going on. So there we go. It tells me we have created the models. So we'll go in here, and there it is. There's our model with all of this nice extra code here for you. It's all set up, nicely commented, ready for you to modify to your use. Again, all of the stuff in the Forge is meant to be a starting place. It's not meant to be some magical automatic updating code. It's just to get you started as fast as possible. So as you can see here, we've got our table name of rabbits that it calls, our primary ID. We are setting created and modified flags. You can go through and change the created and modified column names if you want to published on if you're doing an article or something like that. It's got our date format. Soft deletes are true, and it uses the deleted column here. We are not logging users. If we were logging users, and that was true, it would need these three columns to exist, so it would update those with the user ID automatically. You've got your various callbacks that you can use, which see the docs for information on that. or actually we'll cover that in an upcoming video. And all of your other settings here that we'll cover. If you need to set validation, Sprint does recommend doing validation in the model, and it will automatically do it for you. This is where you would enter your field information. We'll show you that here in just a second. I'm sorry. The fields array here, what this is for is to allow you to basically take your post array as you submit a thing and shove it at the model during an insert or an update and have it only use the fields that are in this list. Now, if you don't have this filled out, it will go through, do a query on the database table to find out what the fields are, and then strip out anything else. And it will also remove on updates and not allow you to update anything that's a protected attribute here. And so you want to fill this out for better performance. At the beginning, it's nice to have it automatically do it if you're still working on your table structure and your schema. But for best performance, you're going to want to put your field names in an array here. This is where you'd enter your validation rules for your form. Anything that has to be specific for an update, like a lot of times you're going to need to set a certain field to be required. I'm sorry, not on an update, on an insert. You're going to set a certain field to be required on an insert that's not required on an update. You may need an isUnique check during your insert, but not an update. For that, you would enter these here. I'll go through that later. Now, what if you already have a table? Say you prefer to work in your database here, and you want to create a migration so the rest of your team has it, or so that it's just in your code base so that it's structured. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll use the mail queue here because that's what's selected, so why not? So here we go. Let's create another model. Our model name is going to be mail queue model. Table name is singular in this case. Created date. We are not doing any creation or deleted on saving, so no creation date, no modify. We don't actually have one, so this doesn't matter. We're not logging user actions, and we are not doing soft deletes for this. I don't think. No, we're not doing soft deletes on that table. So now it has created the model for us. It shows us right there. It's filled in all of the information just like it did for the previous one. In addition, though, since the table existed in the database, it has filled out the validation rules for you. Now, these are very simplistic rules. You are going to want to go through and change these based on your specific application's needs. But it does give you a great starting point. But you're going to want to go through and add these. You're going to want to add your insert validation rules, whichever ones are required. Again, this is a starting point, and we just saved you having to copy and paste and edit these with just a few answers on the command line. Very quick. And so that's models for you. The next one we're going to look at is, let's do a controller. This is called just like the model one, Sprint, Forge, and then the generator name, which in this case is controller. You can always add, in this case, the controller name as another parameter on the command line, and that'll be just fine. I'm just doing it this way to show you that, hey, it does prompt you and help me remember what we're doing here. So let's make a rabbit controller. Why? I don't know. Good question, but let's do it anyway. Model name, in this case, we're not going to do a model just to see what it does. Is this a themed controller? No, we're going to keep this basic for now, and I'll show you what themed controllers do here in a minute. There we go. We've created our rabbits controller. So if we go in here to controllers, here's our rabbits controller. It extends from Myth's base controller here, which has a number of options for you. In this case, we're not overriding any of the cache types. We're not loading any specific language file or model file. We could easily tell it, hey, auto-load that rabbit model we just created. And then it's got your basic CRUD boilerplate code in there ready for you to go and ready for you to expand on. Now, what would happen if we wanted to do that again? Let's say rabbit controller. Whoops. Rabbits, wasn't it? Rabbits controller. In this case, we wanted to use the rabbit model that we made. Well, it didn't ask us anything else, so what's going on here? Let's take a look. If we look, one small issue. It already existed, as it told me here, and I should have noticed that, but it tells us that file already existed, so it's not going to overwrite it. To make it overwrite, we just need to tell it to, oops, oh, I can't type today. Need to tell it to go ahead and overwrite those files, and this will work for any of the Forge generators that exist currently. There we go. Model name is rabbit model. There we go. It tells us right there that we overwrote the file. So now let's go take a look at it. What all did it do for us? Well, it told us that we've got our rabbit model here. It's going to automatically load that every time the controller comes up. Now, obviously, in a lot of cases, you don't want to auto-load classes all the time. Typically, though, in a controller like this, you're going to use that model in almost every method that gets called, so I don't have a problem loading that or the language file here. Let's see. It's got, in this case, the code to automatically load all of the views to be able to insert and update all of your rabbit information for us. If you want it to create the views, though, here, we'll do it again. We'll tell it to overwrite the file, and we'll also tell it to create the views for us. All right. Model name is rabbit model once again. Okay. You do have to have a table ready when you do this. Let's go create a rabbits table real quick. There we go. Now we have a rabbits table, so let's give that another shot real quick. We're going to use our rabbit model. All right, there we go. It tells us it created the views for us here for our index, create, show, and update. So let's go take a look at those real quick. Go to reviews. It's created a subfolder for us here because that's the name of the controller. And we have our create. That's our index, which will list all of the rabbits that are currently exist. This shows an individual one, and you can see that it's showing the name, all the columns basically that are in there, except for the created on and modified on tables. Allows you to update them also. So those views are created for you, and if you visit that controller in a browser, I can talk today too. If you visit that controller in a browser, then it will show you all of the forms, and you'll actually be able to sit there and edit those files already. So you're halfway there. Now we can do that a little bit better with the scaffold, which we'll show you in a minute. But real quick, let's just show you a couple of others, just to get them out of the way. These are very simple. The first one is the view generator. All right, all it's going to ask you for here is the name of the view. Let's give it something Easter. So there we go. We've got an Easter's view now, and it does not create it in a folder. And all it says is this is the Easter view file. This is a little pointless. I mean, if you're already at the command line, it may be quick to do this occasionally. For the most part, though, this is primarily going to be used by other generators. Or you could update it to have certain views that you like and have it generate that way. Now you can create using a subfolder in the name and have it create that actually in the subfolder for you. So there you go. Clean that up real quick. All right. Next, let's look at the seed generator. So this is seed. This is going to be our rabbit seeder. All right. So it automatically creates a new file in database/seeds rabbit seeder. Let's take a look at that real quick. Database seeds rabbit seeder. That at the moment does nothing. If you're not familiar with them, database seeders typically allow you, or they are used to allow you to enter stock information in your database. Let's say you've got some test information that you want to be able to recreate whenever you wipe your database, or you've got some users that you want to be able to recreate very easily. These are all primarily used during tests. You can use them with a great library called Faker to create generic, create hundreds or thousands of generic users if you need to fill up your database with some test data. Very easy. You'd run them from the command line. We'll look at that all on a different day. So there's our seed. All right, so the next thing before we get to the scaffolding is a migration file. Migrations, hopefully you're familiar with, they allow you to keep schemas of your, or to be able to version control your database to some extent, at least the structure and any changes. If you have a team, well, let's look real quick. If we look at our database and a migrations table here, we've already got migrations that set up a lot of the basic database structure that's needed for Sprint. And with the exception of this rabbits table here, which we'll go ahead and delete since we don't need it, it creates all of these tables. And it does so in a database agnostic way. You don't have to do it, but all of the ones that we create through the Forge, we'll use DB Forge to do it database agnostic. This also means that there are a few elements that you may not be able to create like you need to specifically for whatever database you're using. So you may need to go through and tweak those. But as you can see, it saves you a lot of time here. The migration generator is used to create migrations for you. It will attempt to do some smart code generation for you based on the name of the migration itself. So let's call it Sprint Forge migration, and now the name of the table. So let's say we do create rabbit table. Well, that's smart enough to look at it and say, hey, we want to create a table, or it's going to assume a table in this case. We want to create a table because table is at the end of here, and its name is going to be rabbit. So it will generate scaffold, or it'll scaffold some code for us within the migration that allows it to create that using DB Forge. Now it's going to want to see a list of fields. And so let's give it some fields. And the way it handles fields is within a string. The strings will represent the fields and their types. Let's say the rabbit needs a name, and this is a string. String in this case is a alias for variable character 255 length. So we need that. We need ID called ID. What the ID will do here is it'll create a field called ID. It will set that as the primary key, unsigned with auto incrementing. And let's see, what else do we need? So we've got an ID, we've got a name. We need created on, which is a date time, and we need modified on, which is a date time. Oh, and just for the fun, let's give the rabbits an age that we can track. We want this to be an integer, and we can also set the length here for the integer. So the integer, I can't see a rabbit lasting 1,000 years, for that matter. Let's back it off. I can't see it lasting 100 years. So we'll go safe there, because, they could last 10 years old. Sure, why not? So there we go. And it has created a new migration for us. So we look at our migration. Here we go, create rabbit table. Based on the name, create rabbit table, it set up our fields array here with information that we gave it. It added the field, it set our ID, and it created, or set the create table. Now if we roll that migration back, it will also drop the table for you. So that's the basics of the migrations here, except that you can do it from an existing table. Let's do that real quick. So Sprint Forge migration, say create users table, because we know we have one of those, and tell it from the database, so it'll pull the information from the database for us. There we go, we've created a new migration from our database, filled in all of the fields information, just like you would expect. Again, you may want to go through and tweak some of those parameters, but it's going to do its best based on what the database system knows about your information. So if you need to add keys, stuff like that, the database tools are not good enough to read that, and we don't have any good cross-platform way or cross-database way of handling that at the moment, so you'll have to go through and enter that. All right, so the very last one we're going to look at today is scaffold, which will go through and do all of that for you. So we're going to go ahead and scaffold a rabbit today. The scaffolder does expect a table to exist. So let's create our rabbits table again, since we already deleted that. So we've got an ID, we've got a name, which is a variable character 255. We've got an age, which is an int 3. Oh, we decided that was 2, didn't we? All right. We've got our created on, which is date time. Modified on, which is also a date time. and deleted, which is a tiny int 1. There we go. So now we have a database to work from. All right, so let's hit this. Sprint forge. We are forging a scaffold of a resource. In this case, that resource is a rabbit. There we go. And now we have a completely working, although basic, controller model, the views for it, with a migration and a placeholder seeder. See, it shows us here. It invoked the migration generator and created this database or this migration for us. It has created an empty seed file for us. It has created the model for us. And it has, oh, it didn't actually overwrite these. Because I'd already started to do that and some of this information exists, it didn't overwrite that. For a new one, it would actually overwrite this based on the information you had. And then it creates your views for you for that. But that is a quick overview of the Forge and the generators today. Again, there's one more that comes shipped with it. It's for helping out make an API, and we will go over that in a completely separate video. Hopefully this video has given you enough information to dig in and really start to understand how it works and to use it to really increase your productivity on your web applications. I hope you enjoy Sprint. I'll see you in the next video.